Friends. I'm Tabby.
And I'm Caitlin, and today we are going to be discussing the books that really shaped us in our youth, really kind of solidified the types of books we like to read. So, really, we're just going to kind of talk about each one, what we liked about it, and like what effect it had on us,
I think some of
like,
these are going to be very telling.
yeah, you're going to
Um,
be like, oh, that makes sense.
yeah,
And
that
honestly,
tracks.
I feel like my list, you all are going to be like, oh, she's a basic bitch. But you know what? That's okay.
And that's okay.
That's okay. So I'm going to kick us off with The Doll People by Anne M. Martin and Laura Godwin. When
I've
I
never even
tell
heard of that.
you, well, it's for young readers, like
Oh, okay,
young,
okay, okay.
because I was probably like in the first grade or second grade when I read this. But when I tell you, this is the first book that I can vividly remember the feeling of just being absolutely like taken in by the world and just like
Hmm.
enamored with this book. That's what this was for me. And it's funny because it's actually a series, but I don't recall any of them besides the first one. That's not to say that I didn't read them. I don't know. It's possible I just don't remember. But the first one really took me and carried me away on a cloud. So, The Doll People, it's about a little China doll, and her name's Annabelle. She is like an old China doll, like 100 years old or whatever, and she's been in this same family for generations. Like they passed her down to their next
Okay.
daughter, so she's lived with this family forever in her little dollhouse with her little doll family. Well, like decades ago, her aunt went missing, and by her aunt I mean another doll. And so she's like, I have to like solve this mystery. I need to go on this adventure and find my aunt in this house. So she leaves her doll house. But the thing is, these dolls, like they're living, but if they get seen by humans, then they become like permanently inanimate objects.
Oh.
So she has to like sneak,
If
basically,
they
like
like see
sneak
them
around the house.
moving.
Yes, if they see them moving, like Toy Story,
Okay.
like Andy's
Okay.
coming,
Yeah.
except if you get caught, you
It's
actually,
forever.
yeah, you're turned into an actual doll. But it's kind of fun because, she's like an old China doll, and then there's this other dollhouse in the room. And it's like more modern dolls, like plastic, like Barbie type
Hmm.
dolls. And so she's like, oh my God, who are
Who are
you?
you?
And so she like befriends like a plastic style doll. They're
Oh,
obviously very different and it's very cute and it's a big adventure.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I've never even heard of that.
I
That's,
I loved it, and what I loved most about it, I think it just felt so like fantastical and
yeah.
exciting, and I just remember like feeling that way. And
Yeah.
I remember that book is the first time I ever saw the word chaos, and I had no idea how to say it. And I was like, Mom, what's chaos? And she's like, Can you spell it?
I am not even sure,
She's like, Great
actually.
question. Are you speaking English?
Okay, so my first one on my list here, this is probably still one of my favorite series that I would recommend anybody to read, like
Ooh.
even as an adult. It's very good. So it's The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel by Michael Scott. Hilarious. Um, so basically it's about the alchemist Nicholas Flamel and his wife, and they found the source of immortality. And it's in this book called the Codex. And so there's this dude named John Dee, who steals the Codex from them, and basically he's trying to unleash like all of these dark secrets that are within this book, because not only is the secret to immortality in there, but also how to unleash like all these monsters and like chaos and whatever upon the world.
Damn.
And so,
Chas, if
um,
you will.
house, if you will, yes. So when he steals it, they don't have a way to continue making the concoction for immortality, which they have to brew at like a certain time once a year to maintain, or it's like once every however many years, I can't remember, to maintain their immortality. And they've been alive for like 700 years at this point. So they work with these two twins named Josh and Sophie. And this is where it gets a little shady because Nicholas Flamel thinks they are these twins of like prophecy. They're called like the twins of legend, and basically they're supposed to bring balance to the world. So one is like the sun, one's the moon. So one's light, one's dark. And basically they awaken like their senses so that they can come into their power, but they only do one that they think is like the good one instead of the other one. And so it like becomes like this whole thing where they have to figure out like who they are and like what side of the coin they're supposed to be. And they have 1 month to help Nicholas Flamel and his wife find the codex so that they can continue keeping peace in the world, basically. But you find out like not everything's kind of as it seems, and there's like a whole bunch of like fantastic creatures that they meet, like ancient vampires and like Hecate and like the Eldritch Witch and stuff like that. So it's really cool.
That
There's
sounds
a lot of
cool.
really good like folklore to it.
Yes. And you know, like that stuck with both of us through what
Yeah.
we read. Like, oh, love,
It's
love
one of my
that.
parents' favorite series as well.
I have not read those and I
They're
I
so
kind of want
good.
to. Yeah.
And like even though they're young adult, like there's enough action and stuff in there. It like keeps you very interested. Just I
Yeah.
think more of like the historic side of it is what really got me.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds super cool. I
It
love the
is.
vibes. The next one, I don't have quite as much to say about this one, but I do remember really enjoying it. So The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. In my fourth grade class, we had to read this like as a class. And I just remember it being so fun because basically it's like a Clue style murder mystery with
Hmm.
all of these like eccentric characters, like it's basically like giving Clue. But I remember it being so fun to read with the whole class because like we would all have to discuss and like theorize, like try to solve the mystery together. And it was
Hmm.
just like a really fun one as a kid. And I do not read as many mysteries today, like as an adult, but I feel like that's more just because it's not my favorite, not that I don't
Sure.
like it.
I love mysteries.
Yeah, I just don't really read them a whole lot, you know?
Yeah, I like the idea of like cozy like murder mysteries, but I would
Hmm.
never actually sit down and read one.
Yeah, I
But they
just don't
sound
read them a lot.
wonderful.
Yeah, I mean they're very obviously entertaining. They're classic. It's like a classic
Yeah.
formula for a good story.
So my second one is the Blue Blood series by Melissa De La Cruz. The chokehold this series had on me. Like, I've read the ACOTAR series probably, like, I would say 8 or 9 times. I've read this series probably 20 times,
Oh my God.
like, just growing up. Like, I loved it.
Yeah.
So, they're essentially like vampires. And they're called the Blue Bloods because they are, very rich and like well known amongst the society. And essentially, like anytime one of them is like close to like dying or whatever, they take the blood from their body and they can regenerate into new people. So it's always the same
Mm.
people regenerating into new like bodies, but like they keep their memories. And
Okay.
so and this may be spoilers for whoever wants to read it, I don't know. You've had a long time to read it. So they go all the way back to like the Roanoke colony though. So they were some of the first like settlers in the Roanoke colony. And so like kind of the history behind that is that the Roanoke colony disappeared off the face of this earth. They settled, they, thought they were going to be prosperous. And when the next settlement came through on the next set of ships, there was nothing left to show that anybody was ever there except for the word Roanoke carved into the base of a tree. And so basically, like these people, whoever was able to like regenerate, move on, those memories were kind of like locked away. And so there's like this creature that's killing them off slowly. And so once they're completely like drained of blood, they can't regenerate into their next phase. And so Skylar is like the main female character. She's like a half breed, and no one knows like how she was created because blue bloods have to breed with like within themselves. Like they can't
Okay.
breed with like humans. And so she's like she's not sure what she is, and she's like an outcast because even though she does share like the same blood as them, like she's new. And as far as they know, she can't regenerate. They don't know who she is from like past lives. And so like the whole story is her trying to figure out like who she is and how she fits in amongst this. And she's kind of like the key to stopping like this force that's destroying the creatures.
Okay, so a very chosen one
Yes,
story.
and like it's really cool because there's some like biblical aspects to it, like some of like the archangels and demons and stuff like that are in
Like
it too, which
supernatural,
yeah, it's
like
very interesting. It's very good.
I love
But
that.
that was like the first I was ever really introduced to like romance
Hmm.
because there is like a romance aspect to it. And so I'd say that's probably like the first time I ever read like anything like that and I was like, "Oh, that's
Like
different."
I like this.
Like, okay.
This makes me feel happy. Yeah.
Yes. It's really good. Melissa De La Cruz, though, is a little problematic. She does like to trash on authors that take their time writing books. Because
Oh,
she's known for like churning books out and she really prides herself on that.
okay. It's
Um,
not always a good thing though.
so
So,
like I don't love that about her as an author, but I do love her books.
yeah. I mean, fair enough. So, the next one I want to talk about is A Series of Unfortunate Events by
Oh
Lemony
my
Snicket.
God, I love that series.
It's so good. Like I like this is where I discovered my little like we'll call it like an angsty phase for lack of a better word because I was like so I loved like the gloomy melancholy
Like the dark
mood.
academia-esque, like
Yes.
yes,
Yes. And that was my first introduction to this sort of like tone in a
yes.
story. And I loved it. I was like, this is just like, it's gloomy and I love it. Um,
It's so
Also,
sad.
it's so sad. But also, on top of that, we have a secret organization throughout the entire
Love
book.
that shit.
And you know how we eat that up to this
I
very
love secret
day.
societies.
So it truly couldn't be more perfect. This is also the first book series I ever read where it had the ability to break my heart, and it
Oh
did
my
it multiple
God.
times. I had never experienced that before until I read these books, and I now today I still seek that out. I like it when books hurt my feelings.
Yes.
So that really shaped me. And I will say, like, there was that one shitty movie that they made that kind of like almost ruined it for me because I was like, oh, nothing will ever feel the way reading it did. But
Hmm.
I will say Neil Patrick Harris's Netflix version of it is actually a really, really good adaptation.
Yeah.
It's true to the tone. It kind of takes some liberties, but I think it only serves to enhance the story.
I love anonymous authors. Like I
Hmm.
love authors that use pen names. Like I love not knowing who they are.
Yeah,
I love the anonymity of it.
same.
And I'm going to talk about one of those here in a little bit, but yeah, just I don't know. There's just something so different. And I don't think anything like that has been done since a series of unfortunate events. And that's
It
what just
added
makes
to the
it so
vibe
special.
too, like the mysterious vibe.
Exactly. The next series that I love is the Mysterious Benedict Society, and this is by Trenton Lee Stewart. So, in the Mysterious Benedict Society, there is like this mysterious benefactor that holds like this test that basically attracts like gifted students, like gifted children,
Okay.
to like it's like a test that he's basically like no one can pass this. And so they come in and it's set to confuse them so that they fail. Like he wants them to fail so that he can kind of weed out the smartest of the bunch. And so this, kid goes in to take it and he passes and he gets like 100% on it because it like wants you to think outside the box type of thing. And so he finds himself with like a few other children and basically Benedict, the benefactor, he is like, I chose this group of students because there is like this secret like learning institute that is taking advantage of children, like something bad is happening. I want you to go in there because no one's ever been able to escape. And like you four, I think will be able to go in, find their secrets and get back out type thing. But it has to be children that do it because only children can go in.
Mm.
And so basically, like they go in and they have to use their brains and their ways of thinking outside of the box to like unravel the secrets of this institute.
I
It's
love that.
really good.
Yeah. Again, like I would read that today as an adult.
And kind of like along the same lines, I didn't add it into this document, but I do want to touch on it. It's called the book is called The Name of This Book Is, and then it's blurred out. And so the author is called Pseudonymous Bosch, but it's like a mystery, like thriller book about like these kids who like find like the secret society on accident and they get like sucked into like this whole different world of people and stuff like that. And so they have to kind of like learn what's going on so that they can escape out of the society.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah.
I love that.
And all of it's based off of like secret notes and like you never actually know who it's from because there's never anything like listed on like from like A or whatever like that. Like it's all just a blank like a note with no name, nothing, and they have to like go based off of like an anonymous person.
Oh my God.
I love those. Like I loved mystery novels.
Yeah. And it's funny because like I do love it. I love like the way it makes me feel, but that's just not
Hmm.
really what I gravitate towards or
No, that's
did
so
as a
fair. I have
kid
to be in
even.
the right mood for it.
Awesome. I'm embarrassed to say this next one. I won't lie to you. The Twilight series by Stephanie Meyer.
No, don't be embarrassed. Everyone loves it.
Okay, I'll own it. Listen,
Own it.
a girl never forgets her first monster slash paranormal romance.
Too true.
And this was formative for me. I was wishing, waiting, hoping for an undead, ice cold, blood sucking vampire boy to be like, to recognize me and be like, you're not
Pick
like other
me.
girls
Choose
and
me.
choose me, love me. Yeah, I was like, this could totally happen to me because,
No one else, though.
yeah, no one else, just me. I will say, like, I loved this series. I also really loved the movies, and I do remember though when I was reading Breaking Dawn, that here's where this is funny to me because you all have heard if you listen to this podcast by now that Tabby and I do not like an unplanned pregnancy trope.
No.
And spoilers, in Breaking Dawn,
She
that
does get
she does
pregnant.
that. And I remember how pissed I felt in that moment when that happened. I was like, first of all, they just finally got to fuck for the
Yes.
first
It's like
time.
I have felt nothing but longing for the last few bucks and
I was so pissed. And I think that's funny that even then, even as a young girl, I was like, this is bullshit. And today, as an adult, I still get like the same like rage within me when authors do that.
yeah. Well, that was also like one of the books where like I hate using the word ick, but like
Hmm.
I did have like that sensation of disgust
Yeah, whenever
when,
Jacob imprinted on
yes,
the child,
like I remember reading that and being like, I'm gonna
trash,
pretend that didn't happen
trash, garbage.
and I'm just gonna breeze right past that.
Yeah, it truly could not have been a worse end to the series because
Yeah.
I was like loving it, and then the last book is like it's a
You're like,
train
that seems
wreck.
illegal.
Yeah. And everything that I had loved about the series leading up to that, like of Edward and Bella like being in high school and like like everything like them being young and
Yeah.
well, technically Edward was not young at all. But everything I loved about like the relatability as a kid of Bella being young and also being a kid uh got sucked right out of me in that last book when it's like, oh no, she's pregnant with a parasite now.
Like
So
that seems bad.
I was like, okay, well, this alone will prevent teenage pregnancy for me.
Truly best of luck to you.
Yeah. So that's my thoughts on that one.
Okay, so this next one is the Wicked Lovely series by Melissa Marr. This was my first ever book that had fairies in it.
Ah,
And
mine was Akatar.
Really?
Yeah.
No, mine was this series. And like I think that's why I appreciated ACOTAR so much
Hmm.
more when I was reading it because I'm like, hey, I know these things like a
Yeah.
little bit.
Like I know
Um,
the structure of the
like the
fairy
I
realm.
understand the courts and
Hmm.
whatnot. And so that's kind of what this is. Like this girl has the sight, and so she's able to see like fairies and stuff when no one else is able to. So they're just like out
Ooh.
in like the general population. Like this is in like modern day. And so
Cool.
she has to like pretend that she can't see them because if she does notice them, then they'll take her or like something bad will happen to her. And
Yeah.
so like one day she like draws the attention of I don't remember what court it was. But they had like the different courts and like the Seelie, Unseelie, and whatever. And she gets taken like back to one of their courts. And so it starts like this whole journey into like falling in love with
Yeah.
this like Fae king and like he has like an evil stepmother and like all this stuff. And
Oh my God.
yeah, it's like right up your alley, actually. You'd
I'm
probably
about
really
to
enjoy
read
it.
this book made for middle schoolers.
Yeah, no, and like I devoured that series. Ate that shit up.
Yeah.
And yeah, that I think that is why I am probably the way I am today.
Uh, and I'm over here, a grown woman. I'm like, I'm
I
downloading it
love
right now.
that. It's
Um,
actually a really good series.
I will probably read that one as well. I just think, like, listen, in some ways, I'm like, yeah, like I'm an adult, I'm a grown up, but in other ways, I am a child.
You know, sometimes though, like reading young adult books, it's like the tension, the
Hmm.
build up, like
Yeah,
even
because
if
that's
there's
so,
no like
oh,
reward, like
it makes you feel so young at heart
the
too.
longing, like
Yeah, because that's what you felt like when you were like a teenage girl, like that's what you felt. You were like, oh my God, like this crush that I have will never look at
yes.
me. And like
And
that's what those books were like
that's what this
emulating.
is. Like and there are some romantic like qualities to it and like nowhere near what we read today, but like
I'd hope not.
yeah, just like the pining in it and stuff. I'm like this is how books were meant to be written, I think.
I agree.
And it's
It's
just like
beautiful.
it was back before there was like huge hype around it too. It's like fairies, that was kind of like a new thing. That was not done
Yeah.
because you know ACOTAR is pretty old too. Like
Hmm.
Throne of Glass, the first ACOTAR book, like those were written a while ago.
Yeah.
And I would say like these probably line up a little bit more with like Throne of Glass and stuff, but
Mhm.
still it wasn't something that was done.
It wasn't super mainstream until
Yes.
recently, which like I don't care. Like I don't care if things are mainstream or not. Like that has nothing to do with how good they are. But I will say that like even until recently, I feel that people might have like if you were like, what's your favorite genre to read? And you said fantasy or science fiction, they'd probably be like, okay, like
Their minds would
weirdo.
immediately go to like Lord of the Rings or
Yeah.
Wheel of Time, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
True,
So
like old stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. And those are good too, obviously. But yeah, I think that there's so much more of it now, and I love that because it's like my favorite genre. But also like the way that fantasy and science fiction still get lumped together, like at the bookstore, it
I
actually had
love
me,
that
well, it had me so confused because I was looking all over for Iron Flame and it was in the science fiction,
because
and
it
I
has
was like,
dragons in it.
but I was like, but
But is
but it's
it?
also like magic and like I
It's
was like,
fantasy.
yeah. So
Interesting.
I think eventually like the more popular those become, like the more distinct the
Sure.
genres will be. The next one I would love to talk about is the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan.
Have you watched the new show?
I have not.
I haven't yet
I've
either.
heard
I
it's
heard it's
good,
really good.
which makes me happy because again, like with a series of unfortunate events, they made
A
some
really
shitty,
shit ass movie.
yeah, a shitty fucking movie back in my day. So I've heard good things about the show, which makes me feel better. This was my first ever introduction to Greek mythology,
Oh yeah.
besides like Hercules, I suppose. But I was absolutely like sucked in from the moment
Hmm.
I started these books. I thought they were so cool. I loved the adventure. Again, kind of like fantasy vibes because we're dealing with like this mythology woven in to the world. Another chosen one
Hmm.
storyline, which I feel like is a classic. And yeah, since it was so new to me, I just that's all I hyperfixated on for like a full year.
Well, and like even now, like I still am so drawn to like anything that has to do with Greek mythology or
Hmm.
Egyptian mythology, like Roman mythology. I think all that is so interesting.
Me
And it
too.
was really cool how Rick Riordan kind of wove that into like how it affects even, people today because there is still a lot that we draw from that mythology.
Yes.
It's so cool how he did that. It was
Yeah.
such a good, like it was so educational in addition to it being like entertaining.
I know. I agree because really that was my first exposure to it and I learned so much just from tearing up those books.
Did you ever read his series like it was like the Cain series? It was like focused on the
No.
Egyptian. I loved those.
I'm sure I would have loved those as well. I just I
The
didn't ever
Cain
hear of
Chronicles, that's
them.
what it was. So my next one is the Sisters Grimm series, and that is actually kind of where I drew like our handle from, the Sisters Warden, because I loved this series so much.
Hmm.
So basically, in the Sisters Grimm, there's these two sisters, and they are direct descendants of the Brothers Grimm. So the Brothers Grimm, they're, known for writing a whole bunch of fables that depict, life lessons that we can learn, as children, stuff like that. And a lot of them ended horrifically. Like the Grimm fables were truly like what not to do type things.
Yeah.
So anyway, like they start to realize that some of their predecessors' stories are not fake and that they are the legacy to defeating some of these creatures of their past fables. So like there's like the Jabberwocky, there's like the Evil Queen. So like Puck, who is like a trickster type like fairy person, he's like kind of the little love interest there, and I loved him.
So this reminds me of like that show Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, it kind of is, but for kids.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really, really good because you also get to learn about like some of the grim fairy tales that you maybe aren't like super familiar with, and it brings like a lot of attention to like some of the minor characters that did play like a major role in their fables that are kind of forgotten about. And so it's very educational,
Yeah.
but it also just like a really good storyline.
That's
Loved
cool.
it.
I would also read that. My TBR
I'd read
is
that.
so long though. Yeah, I'd read that. You know what? I need like a sticker that says that or a shirt. I'd read that.
Honestly, I need to go back and add all of these to my Goodreads. Hmm.
Yeah. This next one I want to talk about is the Maximum Ride series by James Patterson.
Ooh, it's a
And
good
I
one.
do need to preface this by saying that I honestly
Just madly in love.
I cannot remember a single plot point other than they fly around and they like are kind of running for their lives, but also
And they were
helping.
also hot.
Yeah, they were hot. I think it's funny because I only remember vibes from this series, but the
Yeah.
vibes stuck with me because the way that I felt when reading this series, I remember is the way that I felt the first time I read the Crescent City books. Like it's kind of that
Mm.
urban fantasy
Yeah.
mixture where there's like, I mean, maybe this one you could say is more science fiction actually. But I just loved that it was like contemporary but not realistic.
It's been so long since I read those.
I
And
cannot tell you about them other than that.
I'm pretty good at like recalling stories,
Hmm.
but yeah, no, that feels like a fever dream.
It does, but I remember really liking them.
Yeah, no, I did too. Um, so my next one is the Septimus Heap series by Angie Sage. This was like very like Middle Ages, like witchy, warlocky vibes. Loved it. So basically, Septimus Heap is the seventh son of a seventh son who mysteriously disappears on the day he was born. And the day he disappears, his father finds like a purple-eyed like infant in the snow. And so
Ooh.
basically like they adopt this child and raise it in place of the seventh son that they lost. And so later on we start reading about like this kind of side character who turns out to be Septimus, and like he has these special powers because the seventh son of a seventh son is like a sign of power. It's a very lucky like birthplace to be in.
Uh-huh.
Because seven holds like a lot of power for like a lot of religions. And so basically, like the series just kind of follows him as he tries to figure out like who he is and where he belongs, and like him coming into this power, and like how he can use that to, fight the evils of his world. There's a lot of like side quests and shit that he does, but it kind of reminds me of Merlin.
Oh,
It
I
gives like
love
Merlin
Merlin.
vibes.
Okay. That sounds so cool.
Yeah.
I think everything sounds cool. I'm like,
Listen, I was reading some bangers.
yeah, you were. Listen, I'm also
Thank
like
you,
really
Mandy and
easily,
Jason, for our library in our basement.
they
My
knew what books were
parents
good.
have a library in their basement. And so pretty much any time like a new book would come out that they thought looked interesting, they would buy it for us. And so
Hmm.
even if like one of the four of us didn't read it, inevitably one of us would. Anytime we were at Borders or Barnes and Noble or wherever, they would always pick up like a new series for us. And so even now to
That's so
this day,
sweet.
their basement is like 6 shelves deep of just books and stories and
It's
everything that
true.
they could get
I
their
was
hands on.
always in awe of it every time. Also, like, let's take a moment of silence for Borders
I
because,
know, I know. I said that and I was really sad.
yeah, I used to love going to Borders. Oh
My
my
dad would
God.
take me and we get hot chocolates.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I
my
I
mom, like,
really
I
miss
loved when
it.
my mom took me to Borders. Like, it was a special day when
And they
she
had
took
like
me
their
to
little
Borders.
reading nooks and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss Borders a lot. They would do really well in this day and age, I think.
Yeah, they should come back.
They should.
The last one I want to talk about, which we've already talked about on the podcast. So, the Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins. This
Pivotal.
series was formative. It changed me. I was like, oh my God.
There's evil in this world.
Yeah. And then, like, it's kind of your first introduction as a young person
Into
to,
anarchy.
yeah, like anarchy, like, oppressive government, and really makes you think at like 13 years old, you're like, oh my God, this is a cruel,
Is
cruel
this
world.
play about us?
Okay, so we already let you know these books still hold up to this day.
Hmm.
But I will
Maybe
say
even more so.
they do they hit a little too close to home at this point. But also the newest one, the prequels, like it slays, and
I still haven't seen it. Shut up.
you have to watch it.
I still haven't seen it.
Okay, well, we're gonna watch it together
Okay. I've
right
really
now.
slacked. Yeah, actually, quick pause. We'll be right
Yeah,
back.
like let's have like a quick little live react. You all listen. You all
Do
have a
you,
couple hours to spare?
we'll live stream us watching the Hunger Games
No, we
prequel.
won't be doing that. Um, but I do recommend you watch it.
It's just gonna be me just staring at Tom Blythe the whole time.
Okay. You know, we were
He's a
like,
little hottie.
don't do it. Don't
Like,
thirst over
don't
the
fall in
man.
love. He's so evil.
I will be the first to admit that I am a weak-willed woman.
Why'd they have to make him look like
Why'd
that?
they have to make him so fine? I don't know.
It's not fair. Anyway,
It's actually cruel. It's disgusting.
it's really fucked
Also,
up.
the soundtrack goes hard. Lucy
That's
Gray
what I
Baird's
heard.
like little bops
Her
that she
little
sings.
jaunts, her little ditties.
Yes, the songs are actually so good. Okay, that's all I'll say about that.
Anyway,
You all know about those books.
you already been knowed. Um, so I have one more and then I have an honorable mention because I think it's really important to talk about
Okay,
it.
yes, yes.
Okay, so my last one is the Ranger's Apprentice series by John Flanagan. So I think why I like this series so much, it actually started off as him writing a bunch of short stories for his son to get him into reading because his
Aw.
son was having like a really hard time finding books that he could understand and that he could get into, and his father was an author and wanted him to feel like included.
I'm
And
gonna
so,
cry.
yeah, he had these short stories that he later turned into the Ranger's Apprentice series. And so basically, it's about this orphan named Will who's chosen as a Ranger's Apprentice. And so each book is just like different adventures that he goes on with the Rangers, and like the trouble he gets into.
Oh,
And it kind of like reminds me of The Witcher almost. Like it's like a found family type vibe, but it
actually
is
gonna
very much
cry.
set in like this fantasy, like folkish type vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Think like Aragorn
Oh my
from Lord of the
God.
Rings type ranger. But yeah, so it's following the misadventures of Will and what he does in the with the Rangers. But it's just I thought that was a really cool story that I didn't actually know about until later on, because my dad and I read these together, and he read this with all of us, and so like it was just like a really nice like bonding thing for us and our dad. But then when I later on found out like his dad wrote those for his son to get into reading, I thought that was really special.
I'm actually tearing up right now, but don't mind me. That's very beautiful.
And then I do have the Mortal Instruments on here. That's not my honorable mention, but The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare. That was also one of the ones that kind of got me into reading. If you haven't read it, you should. That those still hold up today. You can
I have not
still
read half
you
of the
can
shit you
still
listed.
vibe with the Mortal Instruments today. But no,
Okay.
my other one is The Chronicles of Narnia. So again, my dad is not a big reader, but the books he does read, they're very, very special to me. And so my older sister and I are very close in age. And we used to share a room. And so every night before you go to bed, my dad had like this special edition copy of the Chronicles of Narnia. And so he'd start with the very first one, which is The Magician's Nephew. And basically, he read each one of those stories for us over the course of like a few years because they're really long stories. And so those are really important to me, and they're really, really good books. Again, they hold like really good values and tales and stuff that I think a lot of kids would really enjoy. But those are probably my most like favorite series.
That is like so very sweet and not to like completely like dampen the mood, but I fucking hated the Chronicles of Narnia.
Really?
Yes, and I don't know why. I truly don't.
I think it's more just a nostalgic thing for me.
Yes. And it was like specifically The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Like I hated it. I hated the
Mhm.
movie.
You
I
should read the
hated it,
other
everything
ones
about it.
though.
I should because I don't know what I just had like a personal vendetta against that book and film. So maybe I'll try some of the others.
One cool thing is though, like I told you, he had a special edition, like giant, like illustrated copy of the
Hmm.
Chronicles of Narnia, and I found the exact same copy at Half Price Books the other day, and it was one of
Cool.
like the limited edition ones, exactly like what he had. So
Did
I
you get
got
it?
it. Yes.
Oh, that's so
If
cool.
I ever have children, I'm going to read them the Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh my God, that's so sweet. But this was a long list of books that, I mean, obviously, I feel like if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not a child. At least I hope you're not, because if you are,
My God, this is
if you
a
are,
no,
like, I'm
don't.
embarrassed.
Where are
But
your parents?
yeah, but some of these, it seems like to this day, like as an adult, they would hold up. And like, even if you are an adult and you don't want to read them, you recommend them to the kiddos in your life and watch the magic unfold.
And also, if you do read any of these, let us know. Tag us.
Yeah.
Tag us if you liked them. If you didn't, keep it to yourself because I don't care.
Yeah, because it'll hurt our
Um,
feelings. If you didn't like Twilight, oh God, I'll cry.
like you're wrong, first of all. I don't know. But join us next week as we discuss Sanctuary of the Shadow by our best friend Aurora Asher. Um,
Honorary best friend of the Best
Honorary
Friends
best
Book
friend,
Club.
yes, in best friend terms, because you all are best friends.
Yeah,
Um,
we're all best friends.
we will be discussing her book that came out on January 9th. It is one of the New York Times bestsellers, like not to brag or anything on Miss
Yeah,
Aurora, but
yeah.
how cool is that?
It's very
So
cool
if you
and well
haven't
deserved.
already, go listen to our interview with her because she is so fucking cool.
She is. She's very sweet and awesome. And she actually, like, this is the first book that she's published traditionally, but she has other books that she's published already as an indie like author. So she has plenty of work out there for you to read if you really love Sanctuary of the Shadow. Don't you worry. She's got a whole other series out there for you. Then the week after that, we are going to be doing our next installment of Poetry Corner, and we're going to be featuring poetry by the National Youth Poet Laureate, Amanda Gorman, who is so
Has just some
amazing.
of the most beautiful pieces of literature I've ever seen. She is
Yes.
just gorgeous to listen to. If you did not get to see her perform at the inauguration, you definitely should.
Yeah, look up that video because we won't be able to do her poems justice when we read them, but we will try. But go ahead, get started on Sanctuary of the Shadow. We'll talk to you next time, and as always,
Let's get lit.